How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you all doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today.
My pleasure.
So my name is Tiffany Esposito. I am the CEO of the Bonita Springs Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers. We are 8 chambers of commerce representing 6,000 businesses and 300,000 residents and constituents in the Lee and Collier area. And we are excited to have you today. We are recording these interviews and we'll be posting them on our websites and our social medias. So again, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
So we just have a few brief questions, but before we get to that, we'd like to just have everybody introduce themselves so you know who you're talking to. So we'll go Donna, Colleen, John, then Chris.
Hi, I'm Donna Germain. I'm the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Cape Coral. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Colleen DePasquale, Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm John Lai. I'm the President and CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Chamber.
Morning.
Good morning, Mike. This is Chris Lopez. I'm the Chairman of the Southwest Florida Chamber, and I consult with the Alliance of Chambers. Welcome.
Morning, Chris.
So we're going to start off and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a pretty interesting character with regards to my background. I've been in the aerospace and defense industry for 40 years. I worked my way up from a very blue-collar position as a mechanic to the boardrooms of a Fortune 100 company, which was Pratt & Whitney, part of United Technologies. I had also served in Washington, D.C. as the #2 person for the Federal Aviation Administration, dealing with national policy, working on international trade agreements with various countries for the aviation industry, of course. And in 2002, I started my own business, which is a aerospace and defense industry engineering and consulting firm. It expanded into other modals of transportation with regards to infrastructure. And in addition to the engineering consulting work we do with just aircraft, I've got a few additional staff folk that help me. We consult the foreign governments on infrastructure development, most notably Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Done some work with the free trade zones in Abu Dhabi with the connectivity to their maritime port, their airport, their rail system, and their and roadways, most notably trying to make that an integrated hub, which I think has a lot of applicability to where some of the future of Southwest Florida could go with a new Everglades airport and the movement of cargo away from Miami, and that smells like opportunity for Lee County to me. I have a bachelor's in professional aeronautics, a master's in management, a doctorate in human resource and organizational development from George Washington, a executive business certificate from the Darden School of Business. I've written several books, speak internationally on various topics. And I live on a dirt road in Bokeelia.
Thank you. And what prompted you to run for office?
Yeah, so quite honestly, I don't like bullies. I believe government can be a bully, directing our lives in directions that we may or may not want to. It has a tendency of becoming a small group of bullies or individuals who become anointed, and there's a steady progression of the same people, same policies, same ideas. I like to be that icebreaker. I want to bring in fresh ideas to not only ensure that we have a community that is representative of the people, but bringing in some great fresh ideas to ensure the long-term sustainability of Lee County and to make it a place that we would be happy to call home, not only today, but for generations to come.
And what makes you qualified to represent the business community?
Yeah, so I've ran businesses as small as a one-man shop, all the way up to tens of thousands of employees. I've done multiple mergers and acquisitions of the due diligence side. I still do that for a number of companies. I've moved companies all over the world. My attention these days are bringing them back to the United States. And in particular, the areas that I would like to focus in on for Southwest Florida would be the attraction of pharmaceutical companies as they are now needing to leave China. There's a national policy for independence. I think Southwest Florida would be ideal for one or two of those locations, and integrate that with possibly attracting one or two more hospitals, and ideally a teaching hospital. So I think my business acumen, understanding the business needs of an organization, understanding that what a right fit looks like, because not every company will fit our community well. And I have a very strong BS meter. So I know when I'm getting fed the wrong stuff. So I think those are all the attributes that would help me steer the county commission from a business perspective.
Great. And in your opinion, what's the most pressing issue facing the Southwest Florida business community? And if elected, what would you do to address this issue?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a twofold item. So one is we have growth, and it's continued growth, and we have challenges with our infrastructure. That makes it very challenging to bring in organizations outside of our area to make it an attractive location for them to come to. And if we look at a lot of the zoning issues, particularly in East Lee County, where a lot of those companies would end up, that the properties are not necessarily currently zoned in a way that would be desirable. So those are some of the pragmatic challenges. The other challenges we have for our business community is that we are very monolithic in our diversity. So we're very service oriented. We're very government oriented. We need a couple of additional arms of revenue generation for our economy. And ideally, as I spoke about the pharmaceutical, that would balance out some of the service industry. So if one sector is going down, another sector may be rising. So that's how I kind of manage my business model. If my engineering is going down, my consulting may be going up, or training. So it's just making sure that there's multiple bell curves in our environment and in our economy here in the county, so that our ad valorem will stay strong, so our business community will stay strong, and that our real estate values will stay strong.
Thank you. So our next question you've addressed, but I'll give you a chance to elaborate if you would like to. As you know, we're heavily dependent on leisure and hospitality, like you mentioned. If elected, what would you do to encourage economic diversification in the region?
The last part, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. If elected, what would you do to encourage economic diversification in the region?
Yes. So I'm a STEM guy. My background is aerospace and defense. We need to bring more STEM type technologies to Lee County. We're ripe for it. The president has created a thing called Space Force. Space Force is a new governmental agency. It will be over in Jupiter, Florida. That is not that far from here, and we should be able to service that industry with some clean businesses here. Now, I put the emphasis on clean because water is critical to our ecology, our economy, and just our quality of life. So I would look for the diversification in the pharmaceuticals, the high-tech industries with regard to space, and also for the software. I have three boys, and the last one just finished up his master's at the FGCU, and he had to leave town to get the great paying job that he wants. He ended up, he's just finished his CPA, and he's over at Ernst & Young in Tampa. So I personally know how important it is that we have a employment stream that offers our kids a livelihood as well, and that we can keep our kids in the stream here as well.
Thank you. So you mentioned water a little bit, and the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers was formed out of the 2018 water crisis, and water quality was and remains our #1 priority. If elected, what specific projects would you advocate for to improve and protect Southwest Florida's water quality?
Sure. So, I mean, very few people realize just how much recreational sport fishing brings to our economy here in Southwest Florida. To Florida, it's about $8.6 billion a year. To our little region here, it's about $467 million a year. That's just sport fishing, saltwater. So that's one indication of how important water is to our economy. So a lot of people will advocate and yell at Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. There is a ton of things we can be doing here locally. And really that's why I'm focused on the county commission role. Last year, a group of us citizens had enough of the blue-green algae and what it's done in decimating our redfish population. So a small group of us formed a not-for-profit called the Florida Fishery Foundation. And its intent was initially just to raise redfish and repopulate our waters. So it's grown beyond that now to water restoration, habitat restoration. And this late August, next September, you're going to be seeing our group in a collaboration with the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Society, rehabbing a number of oyster bars out here between Pine Island and Sanibel. We have a land, we're building a building, we've acquired the oyster shells for the rehab. Those are local projects. And oyster bars used to be one of the fundamental means of water filtration in our area. There's not a whole lot that we can do within the four borders of Lee County about what the water comes in, other than advocacy, but we can deal with that. That's a local action. Another significant one is how we deal with our stormwater runoff. Lee County is highly dependent on the swell system, which means the water goes into a ditch, and that ditch filters out to the estuary. Unfiltered, all the nutrients that we don't want in the water go in there. There are some very inexpensive, low-tech devices that we can put in the existing swell systems to essentially percolate the water before it gets out. There's a lot of things we can be doing, and the county commission can establish the policy for that, work with the various municipalities, because each of the 5 cities have control of their own destiny. But the reality is that water does go into our shared watershed, our the estuary and the sound. And the other thing is about the water that we treat through our sewage systems, and sometimes surplus back out into the Caloosahatchee. Despite the fact that Cape Coral and Fort Myers have engaged in an agreement to purchase 12 million gallons of reused water and recharge their freshwater canals, that still leaves 8 million gallons going into the Caloosahatchee approximately every day. The Caloosahatchee is 200 million gallons of water a day going down. So we're still making a significant impact by providing high nutrient water into what could potentially become another bloom. We must find another solution, and it's not putting it into the river. I would champion that. So, and the list goes on and on and on, and includes pesticides and insecticides and spraying and grass clippings and standardizing our fertilizer ordinances. But the message is that we can always defer to somebody else, Tallahassee or Washington, D.C., but until we get our own house in order, we're just yelling out the window.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You talked about policy a little bit, so our next question is a little bit more about policy rather than projects. So what specific actions do you think lawmakers should take to improve and protect Southwest Florida's waterways?
Yeah, so first off, we have 6 different fertilizer ordinances in Lee County. So each city has their own, and then we have Lee County has its own. None of them are the same. And the reality is that they all feed the same waterway. We should harmonize, understand what the differences are, what are the best practices, and let's establish the best standard for all of Lee County. Some of them are actually off a month than others. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to be doing things differently throughout the county with regards to protecting our water through adding fertilizer, putting restrictions on setbacks to where you can mow, by allowing grass clippings into the water or not, and the list goes on. And there's a lot of exemptions based on golf courses and et cetera, et cetera. With regards to the role of county commissioner, the commission only deals with unincorporated Lee County. So where I think the the value comes in as a commissioner is having the leadership capacity to work with the other cities, the mayors and their city councils, to come up with forums and establish a synergized approach for addressing our water issues. I've been a leader all my life. When I was in the military, I was a sergeant. I know how to manage cats. And people with different types of perspectives. And as an executive or even working with the government, it's the same thing. You're working with people that have their own agendas, not necessarily negative agendas, but they have their own profit and loss, so to speak. They have their own constituents they have to manage. And the thing is, we have to find that shared vision and walk towards that shared vision together.
Great, thank you so much. So one last question. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about you or your priorities?
Yeah, so I'm a critical thinker. God gave me a couple blessings. He gave me the gift of gab, so I'm not bashful. He also gave me discernment and perseverance. And I do not follow direction that is given to me without validation. I do challenge anything to make sure. I mean, like President Reagan said, right? Trust but verify. And I that is me. When staff provides me information, whether it's in a government fashion or even in my own business, I want to understand how they got to that conclusion. Were there alternatives to the outcome? So I think one of my strongest attributes is the ability to critically think. I think it's also the ability to engage with others who may not share the same perspective on something and engage in a critical dialogue and suspend my own bias to hear out where their perspectives are. And maybe we come to a different location than either one of us were even anticipating. But I love Lee County. I moved here before Hurricane Charlie. My home was completely destroyed in Charlie here on the northern end of Pine Island. My boat was upside down on top of another boat. All my belongings. And it was a great time if I wanted to cash out. I didn't. I reinvested in Lee County, and I will continue to do that for the rest of my days.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. Like I said, these will be posted on our websites and our social media, and we wish you luck in the election.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd encourage everybody to go to my website. It's votedreikorn.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Mike.